whether in fact is something that we could try to replicate elsewhere in the country. It's a wonderful experience that we're seeing. It's confirmed each time the reports come out from Stats SA. This question about, it should be, remember, this question about, from Makuba, just remember this. Even without this thing of Oak Bay and other things, etc., it's a normal thing that the government, through the relevant ministry, will interact with the South African Reserve Bank regularly. All right? When we rolled out the 50-50, we started working on that, and we had to discuss, learn from what they're doing there, how they run this thing, how we should run this thing in such a way that we stick within the law and companies themselves, because now we were creating new companies with the 50-50 in terms of agriculture and farming. So you have to interact with that. It has nothing to do with, it doesn't have to be a crisis for that to happen. So as to whether, with regards to this matter is concerned, we don't know. We don't know what the committee or the IMC is going to come up with when it reports to the president, and then it's reported to cabinet. It's not done yet. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. It's a big question of the unemployment one. I hope you got that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister Nkwinti. I'm going to allow Pretoria to take some questions on that side. And Deputy Minister Dlodlo, once we've got the questions from Pretoria, I would like you to start by giving a brief précis. We did go quite quickly through the statement, but if you can give us a brief précis on the OGP, and then we can respond to the questions from Pretoria. Pretoria, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. We don't have questions in Pretoria.
Okay, that's great. Then, Minister Dlodlo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Donald. South Africa took over in 2015 as the lead chair of the Open Government Partnership, and I stand in as the President's Special Envoy to the Open Government Partnership. We took over from Mexico. We lead a partnership of 69 member countries and some huge number of civil society organizations. We hosted the steering committee on the 3rd, on the 4th in Cape Town, and on the 5th and the 6th, we hosted the Africa Regional Summit. What came out of that summit was that for the first time we had a sizable number of smaller civil society organizations that were not traditionally part of the Open Government Partnership, and in a sense they brought the grassroots embedded flavor of what civil society organizations would bring into a summit of that nature. And at the end of the summit, it was agreed that South Africa hosted the largest summit of the OGP ever, regional summit ever. The outcomes were the most qualitative, but also we were then requested to assist in developing an OGP regional summit blueprint. Because for a summit as big as that, for starters, we did not even employ the services of an events company. We did that ourselves with the complement of about 16 staff, if I'm not mistaken, with people from all over the continent and from many parts of the world as well. Under the theme that really relates to the implementation of Agenda 2063, the Sustainable Development Goals, and we had panelists that really speak to those issues. We invited the African Development Bank, we had NEPAD and the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, who are also responsible for ensuring the monitoring and creating tools to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in the continent. We also had Mo Ibrahim, who is an ambassador of the Open Government Partnership. We had the former chairperson of the IEC, Advocate Penzi Tlakula. We had quite a few people, luminaries from the continent, both from academia, from civil society, who really gave insightful presentations on the implementation of SDGs, on issues relating to access to information, on issues relating to the digital age and how communities can use, could innovate and use technology to access information. We unveiled the third country action plan of South Africa, which also includes a commitment on beneficial ownership, and the fact that we have already started rolling out the process of developing our own government portal, where we'll be looking at different data sets that will be put up onto that portal. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. What we have done as well in South Africa is that we've created a partnership through the OGP with the media. And you will very well see that we've had quite a few meetings with the National Editors. Well, we've had 2 meetings with the National Editors Forum. We've invited with us on the trip to the Mexico summit some media houses. So we have a very good relationship with the media on the Open Government Partnership, and we hope to enhance that. With the civil society organizations as well, we also have developed that very good relationship. And as we move towards implementation, we will be inviting people to assist not only in the implementation, but also in the assessment of where we are with regards to whether or not we did meet the commitments that we had set ourselves to between civil society and the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Can I take another round of questions from Cape Town, and then we can lead to close? Any questions? So is there a hand? No? Okay. We can start here.
Janet again from Media 24. Just on a point of clarity, Mr. Nkwinti, when you say Cape Town should be replicated, could you be a bit more specific what you actually mean there with regard to the tourism? What exactly should be replicated? Thanks.
No relative advantage. You in economics, you work on that, whether you're talking domestic or national context, you work on relative advantage. Cape Town, as I said, is very strong on tourism. Cape Town has probably been able to identify that there's a niche, and they've worked on that niche. There's something that it may sound very novel. Now, people who use sign language, serving people there, and Cape Town tells a story. It's a beautiful story, all right? You go to this hotel here called the Westin. You just go there and look at how they position that hotel. You go there. If you go there once, you want to come back there. Cape Town is laid back, all right? It's laid back, and yes, there are challenges, serious challenges, as I said at the beginning of my input, that you've got lots of people who coming into Cape Town from the Eastern Cape, poor people at that. And yet we still can see the stability in terms of, you don't have a shoot up in terms of economic, unemployment in Cape Town, despite that. And so it tells you that Cape Town has been able to use that relative advantage of tourism to great effect. Now, every city in South Africa has got to look at that, say, what is our niche, what is our relative advantage, and make the best use of that. In my view, that's a lesson from Cape Town. It's not a political thing, it's a simple economic logic. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is it the last question? Okay, thank you. We'll take that.
Good morning. I'm Jenny Evans from News 24. Minister, could you please expand on the plans to introduce new laws against racism and hate speech?
Sorry, Mr. Nkwinti, I appreciate your comments about Cape Town, but my question was whether one shouldn't look at a different strategy by focusing on local authorities, on say, sound governance. And I appreciate the economic advantage that Cape Town has in identified the niche and develop it. But isn't it a better policy, a strategy to look at local authorities to combat unemployment?
Okay, those are the last two questions. If I can just sum up, the first one is government's approach to legislation on racism and hate speech, and also to follow up around the issues of unemployment and economic growth, what our strategies are. Those are the two questions, ministers.
Thank you very much. I think it is proper that at this point in time, especially because all of us have noted the upsurge of racism in our society, that in the first instance we should conduct an introspection as to why we have this kind of upsurge 22 years down the line into our democracy. Is it not that we did lay a solid foundation to address some of the issues relevant to racism? What is it which has sparked this kind of attitude in South Africa? Because we believe, some of us, that we have worked very, very hard to really deal with issues of socialization of our people, social orientation, issues of racism, and the fact that we found ourselves 24 years ago, going backwards, in a situation where there was serious conflict in this country because of racial tensions and the racial laws which were there, which were encouraging discrimination. 22 years down the line, we've done away. We've removed all laws which allow for discrimination in our society. And we've done a lot of work in educating our people and empowering them in understanding the implications of those laws. Why the upsurge? I think it's a matter which all of us as society should engage in a dialogue on and seek to understand why is it that we are going backwards on this particular matter. And therefore, it obviously means that government must now, other than talking and engaging with communities, etc., should actually put a legislative framework which will encourage penalties to be put in place to deal with issues of racism. Because it's not as though there is ignorance. It's just that there are people who simply have decided that in spite of everything and the achievements which have been made in South Africa to deal with these issues, that they will simply continue because there's nothing stopping them against it. And I think that, therefore, the proposals made by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development and Corrections should be encouraged. Whether that will in fact change the attitudes of some of the people who are now once more encouraging racism in South Africa is another matter. For me, it's a matter which is deep down in a person's heart, and whether there is commitment in the individual to promote non-racism, non-sexism in South Africa, and promote the Bill of Rights, which all of us committed ourselves to, and the Constitution, which was adopted in 1996. I think that what is more disgusting, I should say, about the statements made by Judge Johnson is the fact that he's a member of the judiciary. And that, in fact, the judiciary, the way we see it as ordinary South Africans, not as politicians now, I'm just talking as an ordinary South Africans, these should be people who are beyond reproach. Because the fate of a number of people lies in their hands. So if a member of the judiciary will make that kind of statement, you then want to go back and say, then who is going to protect the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa? She could have been appointed, for instance, into the Constitutional Court as a member of, as a judge into the Constitutional Court. She could have been easily appointed. If she's a judge in North Gauteng, she could have been a judge to the Constitutional Court. Now, what kind of judge is that who will make these kinds of statements? Where do we go to when we have a crisis of interpretation of the laws which we have, which we ourselves have put in place? Where do we go to for recourse in the event of a disagreement ensuing amongst ourselves? Where do we go to? Who do we approach, if not the judges? We respect the judiciary. And if some elements, some members of the judiciary are going to discredit the judiciary in the manner in which this lady has done, and I think it's so unfortunate because she's not just white, she's also a woman. And a woman, at a time when women are fighting strenuously against issues of violence against women and children, a woman makes this kind of statements. I think that we believe as government the penalties are a correct route to go, but still, for me, the onus is on the individual South Africans. It is about our commitment to this Constitution. It is about our commitment to never go back to where we were 24 years ago. It is about our commitment to non-racialism and non-sexism. And I think that the least we can do, all of us now, is to actually challenge some of the statements which people are making. By the way, this is not the first case. We've seen a couple of them in the past few months where people have made very serious derogatory statements which point to racism. And that is why I'm saying, therefore, the question is, why? Why 22 years into our democracy are we retrogressing on issues of racism? I think there's a problem, and we need to deal with the problem. And the only way in which society, South Africans, will deal with this issue is when South Africans engage and engage and engage and be honest with one another about the manner in which we conduct ourselves and how we see one another. Thank you. There's a minister who would like to make some additions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just to add to this, I think racism is basically an assault on a collective that has already gone through a living experience of hate, because that's what racism is, and decades of violence against them. And the sad thing with that is, over the years, South Africa has sought to heal from that past. And what the incidents that we're seeing today actually do is to unravel all of that which we've done over the past few years to try and heal the pains of the past. Not only does it do that, we find that more and more it would create an environment where you are assaulted racially every day, you would then start to retaliate. Now, you can imagine if we do not find ways of dealing with it legally by creating legislation and points of recourse to deal with issues of racism, that you will find a situation where it escalates beyond what it is today, and it becomes serious racial tensions between blacks and white in South Africa, something that all of us would not want to see. Because if it is left unfettered for many years, it will create a situation where those that are on the receiving end of racism will retaliate, and it is not going to be a good thing for our country. And the last thing that some of us would want to see, having come from that era, is a reverse of where we come from. Thank you.
Just want to deal with a follow-up question on Cape Town. When I refer to Cape Town, I refer to Cape Town, including the municipality, because that's exactly the point here. If the government is in Cape Town, in other words, in the context of what I was saying, has been able to work with the private sector so that the partnership with local municipalities and other stakeholders to create a platform for dialogue between ourselves and young people in identifying strategies that we can use to contribute towards their development. A number of anchor projects are being run collaboratively to divert young people away from imprisonment. Coming to Cape Town. Members, colleagues, we are encouraged by two young men who are my special guests today. These are former inmates, the award-winning Afro-jazz musician Nati Mankai, who became successful, young people, stakeholders, and future generations to find more innovative solutions to the challenge of youth unemployment. In this regard, we have designed a program of utilizing the expertise developed internally in all our centers to empower young youth at risk of committing crime as correctional services. We are referring to the government, whether it's provincial or municipal, level. So those things are very important, things that you don't have very much negative things there. But remember at the same time, I don't know if you listened 2 days ago to radio. I was listening to radio, I think I was going to Beaufort West, Sakina Kamwendo. There's an angry man from the township, one of the townships in Cape Town. After the mayor had spoken, the angry man is yelling anger and almost swearing at the mayor because our conditions in the township, living condition in the township, are very poor and very bad. So you have this contradiction. And perhaps it was implied in my saying that there's an influx of people from the Eastern Cape coming to Cape Town. The conditions are not as good as they would find. But the point I was making was that notwithstanding that, you still have a low level of unemployment in Cape Town, the lowest level of unemployment, because Cape Town has been able to maintain this institutional tourism, which is a great income earner for Cape Town. So I wasn't separating the municipality from the private sector and all of the institutions of tourism. Tourism becomes a big niche here. Those issues are critical to it.
Thank you very much, ministers. Colleagues, I think that was a good note to end this on. Thank you for your time. That brings this to an end. Thank you. There is an Eskom
to law enforcement after being on the run for 3 years. Another inspiration. Thank you.